am so excited about today's podcast. Today, we are diving into something I love sharing with others. It's a personal testimony and one that I love to give God the glory for any chance that I can get. Have you ever heard the word tangible and then pause to really think about what it means? Tangible means something you can touch, feel, or hold in your hands, something that's real. And I think that's what faith often leads us toward, believing in what we can't see until one day God lets us hold the proof of His promise. Hebrews 11:1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." When what you've prayed for, cried over, and waited on finally becomes visible, when faith turns into something you can touch, that's when it becomes tangible. Faith becomes tangible when what once seemed impossible is suddenly right in front of you and you realize, this is it. This is what I've been trusting God for. That's what this episode is about. My tangible miracle. Hey friends, and welcome back to Making Encouragement in Chaos. I'm Susan Rayner, pastor's wife, homeschool mom, and your friend in the middle of the mess. If this is your first time listening, I'm so glad you're here. And if you've been with me for a while, thank you for coming back. So my daughter just turned 16 this month. I mean, like literally. And every year around her birthday, I find myself reflecting on how she even got here. Because, see, she's not just my daughter. She's my tangible miracle. I can hold her and squeeze her, kiss her, and call her name George. And I hope that most of you get that. If not, you may not be as old as I am. Yet, if I were to be truly honest, there was a time when I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that. You know how sometimes you look back at your life and realize that what felt like delay was actually God's design? That's how this story feels. It's one of those moments that taught me what faith really means. Believing before you see it, trusting when you don't understand it, and holding on when everything in you wants to give up. When my husband and I got married, we both wanted kids. And he always joked about wanting a dozen. And I really think that if God would allow it, he would have been happy with a dozen kids. But I would always laugh and say that 2 would be plenty. I was happy with just 2. However, by our second year, I was ready to start trying. And the problem was my body wasn't cooperating. I had struggled with female issues since I was a teenager, and back then no one really talked about those things. I thought it was normal, but it turns out it wasn't. Eventually, I went to a doctor who told me point blank I'd never have children. Just like that. No compassion, no explanation, and those words hit me hard. I remember walking out of the office feeling so crushed. I wanted to just find a spot to just curl up and cry. But deep down, I knew God had the final say. My parents had shown me that all throughout my life, that faith was important in our walk with God. So even when my faith felt shaky, He was still planting a seed of hope inside me. And over the years, people spoke promises over me. Prophecies that said I would have a child, and I held on to them the best I could. But there were days that it was really hard. There were times I cried in prayer asking, Lord, did I hear you wrong? But then, in His quiet way, God would send little reminders that He hadn't forgotten me. Other ministers coming in and letting me know that God heard me and it was coming. The promise was coming. So if you've been for me a bit, then you will remember my testimony from episode 6, When Your Rhythm Feels Off. If you haven't listened to it, I encourage you to go back and give it a listen. I'll link it down below in the show notes. But God nudged me to pack. That's the best way I know how to say it. Basically, I felt him nudge me and say, your move will be quick. And I didn't really understand what that meant, so I just kind of brushed it off. But I had no plans of ever leaving her home. I mean, I'd lived there all my life. But not long after, my husband and I were called to pastor a church in Texas. It was a huge leap of faith. We didn't have jobs lined up. We didn't know a soul there, but we knew it was God's voice, so we went. That move turned out to be the setting for the miracle we'd been waiting on. I found a new doctor when we moved there who finally gave me some answers, PCOS and anemia, and explained so much. So she started me on treatment, and for a little while I thought things were getting better. But then the pain came back worse than ever. And I can remember her telling me, Susan, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And oh my goodness, could that not preach? But I literally found myself one day collapsing at work, completely overwhelmed. My husband had to come get me, take me to the ER. And I wondered again, God, what are you doing? It felt like the story of Lazarus all over again. Jesus had told them, this sickness is not unto death. And then a few verses later, Lazarus dies. What? And I felt that because sometimes the promise God gives you looks like it's gone, but it's really just waiting for resurrection. The waiting feels heavy. The silence stretches long, and it's easy to wonder if God forgot. Yet, just as he called Lazarus forth at the right moment, he also breathes new life into the places in our hearts we thought were beyond hope. When everything seems lifeless, he is still the God who brings dead things back to life. So 10 years into our marriage, I was tired, physically, emotionally, spiritually. We even started talking about adoption. I told God, if that's how you want to fulfill this promise, I'm okay with that. And I think deep down inside, there was a part of me that still wanted to have control over the situation. I was truly weary of waiting. But, see, that's where that verse comes in, Proverbs 3:5. And I know I quote it a lot, but it's very important. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. You have to trust him with every fiber of your being and forget all of your supposed knowledge and things that you know, and you have to give it all, and you gotta believe what he's told you. And I preach this verse all the time, and when life gets me down, I quote it over and over and over again to remind myself that nothing is in my control. Not long after talking about adoption, we decided to take a little getaway for our 10th anniversary, just to clear our heads, because we needed space to breathe again. Yet a few months later, I felt something different in my body. I don't know how to explain it, but I remember the mix of fear and hope that hit me. I bought a pregnancy test, and I literally left it sitting on the counter for a day because I couldn't bring myself to take it. I just kept praying, Lord, if this isn't it, please help me handle the disappointment. When I finally took it, it was positive. My knees gave out, and I just sat there crying and whispering, thank you, Lord. I was just so overwhelmed that this was even true. And I immediately went and woke my husband, and I told him. I was like, I'm pregnant. He was out of it. He was literally asleep, and he was like, okay, yeah. But I was too excited to care. I had to go to work, and I left there so excited. Yet on the way, I think it finally registered with him because I received a phone call. He said, "Wait, did you say you were pregnant?" And it was one of those moments that felt completely unreal for both of us. The miracle wasn't easy coming, though. See, there was still some faith that was required. So fast forward to when our daughter was born. Right towards the end, things began to change. Everything was going great, but then suddenly I woke up one morning, and it was early on a Sunday morning, and I had a massive headache that I just could not shake. I didn't have much knowledge in having children. I didn't know what to expect. My mother was in another state. I was just going by the fact that I had a headache, and that's it. I didn't think anything of it. I typically shake off any ailments that I have. I don't really take a whole lot of stuff. I just kind of keep pushing forward because that's what we've always done. That's the way we were raised. And I went to church as usual. But I came home that evening and I laid down. And I told my husband that my head felt like it was going to explode. And throughout the night, I became violently ill from the headache. My only relief was a hot shower during the night. So that morning, as soon as the doctor's office opened, I called to find out what I could do, if anything, to get some relief. My doctor's response was, "Get to the office immediately." Now that is a whole nother story, getting to the office. Another one maybe one day if you want to hear it. It's hilarious. But once we arrived, they checked my blood pressure and it was extremely high. I had developed preeclampsia. They sent me straight to the hospital, and from there, things began to get really scary. My husband sat with me while they did all they could to bring my blood pressure down, and he prayed. I can remember mostly being in and out of it. I don't remember a lot, but I do remember the next morning that word came that we would be having an emergency C-section that afternoon. My life and my baby's life was at stake. And I can remember feeling so scared. God had given me this baby. I was holding on to every ounce of faith that I had to believe that all would be okay. Later that evening, our daughter was born, a tiny red-headed miracle. And when I say red-headed, she had fuzz all over her hair, but it was red-headed. She was red-headed, just as red as could be. She was only 4 pounds and 9 ounces, and she was so tiny, 15 and a half inches long. Now, she spent time in NICU from there, and that was scary for a new mom. I stayed in the hospital with her for 1 week, but then after that, they sent me home with a C-section. And thankfully, there are things out there, if you don't know and you're a new mom, there are things out there that will help you find hotels, stuff like that. Ronald McDonald's House, give to those people. They helped us to be able to stay in a hotel near the baby so that we could be there with her consistently. It was wonderful. But I spent those weeks praying harder than I had ever prayed before. Every day, I kept saying, "God, you gave her to me. Help her thrive." And he did. There were things that she had to learn to develop by being born so early. But eventually, 3 weeks later, she was finally cleared to go home just in time for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving means so much to us here in this home. I knew when she came home that I was looking at the fulfillment of every promise, every tear, every prayer. She was and still is my tangible miracle. 16 years later, I still catch myself staring at her and thinking, "Wow, God, you really did it." She's growing, thriving, and walking in the joy that only God could give. And every time I see that red hair, I think about how God even cares about the small details, the quiet desires of our hearts that we never even speak out loud. Psalms 37:4 says, "Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart." I never asked for a redheaded daughter, but he knew, he saw, and he delivered. As I reflect on everything God has done, I know that many of you may be in your own time of waiting for something to change. Maybe you've been praying for something so long that you're not even sure what to say anymore. I want you to know God hasn't forgotten. The waiting isn't wasted. The silence doesn't mean he's not working. Sometimes he's just preparing the miracle. It might not come how you expect it or when you expect it, but when it does, you'll see his hand in every detail. So before we close, I just want to take a moment and thank you for sharing this space with me today. This isn't the end of the story. There's more to come. God didn't stop with one tangible miracle in our lives, and I can't wait to share another testimony of his faithfulness in a future episode. If you'd like to read the full version of the story, I'll link it in the show notes, or you can head over to makinmacon.com and look for a tangible miracle. If today's episode encouraged you, would you share it with a friend or leave a quick review? You can also connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, or at makinmacon.com. And if you want midweek encouragement straight to your inbox, sign up for my Stay Rooted email. Remember, I'm always praying for you, even if I don't know who you are. God bless.